This is Rise. Let's lock in with the goal of changing one life at a time. Yours. Together, let us rise up, inspire, strengthen, and elevate our minds. It's time to Rise on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello, my name is Dr. Saran Heron, and welcome to Rise. Today we're going to talk about keys to mastering stress. Today, my guest is Dr. Steven Sideroff, who is an international recognized psychologist, executive and medical consultant, and expert in resilience, longevity, optimal performance, addiction, neurofeedback, and mental health. He has published pioneering research in these fields. He is an associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science and Rheumatology at UCLA's Geffen School of Medicine. He was the founder and former clinical director of the Stress Strategies program of UCLA Santa Monica Hospital and former clinical director of Moonview Treatment and Optimal Performance Center. He has helped establish innovative training and treatments approach in optimal function in mind-body medicine in the U.S., China, and Europe, and hosted summits in longevity, resilience, and leadership. His new book is The 9 Pillars of Resilience, The Proven Path to Master Stress, Slow Aging, and Increased Vitality. Thought leader and research pioneer, established training programs around the world. He's here today to talk about keys to mastering stress and how to bounce forward, as he calls it, and let go of things you cannot change. Dr. Steven, welcome to Rise here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you, Saran. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's my pleasure to have you on our program. Now, you've been a psychologist for 50 years. That is a long time. What is your motivation? I have to ask you.
I have a passion to help people find their true path and to master change and transformation. That's the most difficult thing that we all deal with in life, is how do we change from our old patterns? And, much of my career has been designed to help people find new paths, different paths, helpful paths, optimal paths.
Wow, amazing. Now, research is something that you continue to do. Could you share with our listening audience, why is research so important to you? I have many parallel tracks to my career: clinical work, training, developing programs. But research is a key to my interest, because research is the notion that you come up with an idea. You have some idea of what will work, but it's doing the research that actually proves that it's the case. Very important.
So it's been very important for me to do research with the very ideas, theories that I come up with, to literally demonstrate that they are correct and accurate.
Great explanation, like you said.
And then if I then share that with my audience, and I could tell them that I have this proof, that I've demonstrated this in research, it helps people believe that it's possible when they know that the research has shown it already.
Of course, very important, like you mentioned, research showing that it actually works.
Right.
So you also do training all over the world, China, Europe. Share with us some key points as it pertains to training. Why do you think, for those that may be listening, that training is so important as it pertains to, of course, we're talking about mastering stress?
Well, I would say, as I talk to your audience, we're all dealing with difficulties with stress in our lives. We're living in a more stressful, more complicated time, making more demands on us. And yet, how many of us really learned good ways of dealing with stress?
Good point.
Very few of us, really. We just absorb the messages and the lessons of our primary caregivers, usually mother and father. And, they may have had good intentions, but they didn't have the appropriate learning or training. And so we we get set off in the wrong directions very early in our lives. And now people come to me to find the more optimal way of living their lives in which they handle stress better, they perform better, and they're more successful and happy in their lives. That takes change.
Yes.
That takes a change from the old ways that have been ingrained in us and new ways.
Right.
And the good news is that there's such a thing called neuroplasticity, such a thing that with new learning, you could literally change and rewire your brains to healthy habits.
Right.
But that takes training, and that's where training, practice come into effect. In order to really switch from old patterns to healthy new patterns, you have to have an intention, you have to have a commitment, you have to have what I refer to as a growth mindset. A growth mindset simply means you're not stuck in those old patterns.
Yes.
It may be difficult to shift away from them, but it is possible as long as you follow certain steps, which I outline in my book, The 9 Pillars of Resilience.
Wonderful. And we're going to get into that soon. Now, I'm sure in your field, doing this for a very long time as a psychologist, it can become challenging. What are some challenges that you have faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, in my own work, I deal with, just like everybody else, I deal with habits that are not the best habits. Like
Yes.
one of my downfalls is eating too much sugar.
I think we all have that problem. You're not alone.
So last year I did a summit on longevity,
Right.
and I did it with a colleague who is a physician, and I focused in on stress and resilience, and he focused in on things such as diet and the things in our diets that hurt us, and sugar is a primary ingredient that really hurts us. And so I was faced with habits that I have about desserts and things like that I had to take a closer look at. And I'm reflecting to everybody because we all have habits
Yes.
that don't serve us, but they're sort of ingrained in us. And so I had to really hold the intention. And what helped me with the intention was my goal.
Right.
And my goal was to be healthier. And I knew that if I wanted to be healthier, I had to start reducing significantly how much desserts, how much sugar I had in my diet.
You have
And
to give
so
up something.
that was a challenge for me,
Yes.
but one that I literally applied some of my own techniques that I train and teach others about, such as setting an intention at the start of my day. Okay. I want to avoid being hungry during the day, because if I'm hungry and I don't have an immediate solution, I'm going to reach for the easiest foods, and they're usually prepared foods or foods with bad ingredients. So I had to hold the intention and start my day planning out how I was going to deal with my meals throughout the day so that I wasn't subject to automatic behavior, old behavior. And everybody in the audience can take that lesson and apply it to something in their own life. If you want to change your pattern into a healthier pattern, you have to start each day with a plan and an intention, and plan out the day so that you don't step into the booby traps that are based on old patterns, old lessons.
I agree with you. Now we're going to get into the topic I'm sure many can relate to, and that's stress. We're going to talk about it and the common things from your experience that you see with individuals. What are some things that you find that people really stress themselves over most commonly?
You know, it's interesting. I asked that question in a recent workshop that I gave at a corporation. And the most common response was not that there was a particular thing that was so stressful, but more common was, what's stressful to me is how many things I need to get done,
Right.
how many things are on my plate,
Right.
how much I have to get done. And so there's this sense of overwhelm and the sense of time pressure in people's lives of so much that they need to do. And so the approach to dealing with that is to, number one, be realistic with your time and what you're capable of doing. So a lot of people start their day with this big long list, to-do list.
I'm sure, yes.
And and we put that to-do list not because we think we can actually get to all those things, but because those are all our responsibilities.
Yes.
And there's a little bit of magical thinking that we all engage in. If I put it down on my list, I should be able to do it.
Yes.
And then we get to the end of the day, after feeling time pressure throughout the day, trying to get as much done as we can, we get to the end of the day and we say, well, maybe I did 5 out of 10. And now we're disappointed in ourselves. Now we're judging ourselves. Now we're being hard on ourselves because we didn't complete that list. And so the healthy approach, the resilient approach is, number one, be realistic with your time.
Absolutely agree.
A lot of people will make a schedule, but then they won't take into consideration, well, it takes me, 20 minutes to get from point A to point B, and I didn't calculate that 15 or 20 minutes into my schedule. Or we don't take into account emergencies that come up, things that come up unexpected, that we take time to do that, and then we have to get back to our schedule. And of course, now we're going to be behind on our schedule. But instead of giving ourselves a break, okay, we had that emergency, so I'm going to be behind, we feel this additional pressure to catch up to where we, quote unquote, should be. Okay, so back to the healthy approach. Number one, anticipate that there are going to be unexpected interruptions so that you give yourself some buffer. Make sure you take into account travel time and switching from task A to task B. Be more realistic with your time. But I do encourage people to keep a schedule because I find that people get more done and then they don't feel as overwhelmed.
I agree with you.
Next thing is, at the end of the day, if you've worked hard on all the things that you needed to do, be appreciative of your hard work. Be accepting of what you got done. In fact, feel good about what you got done rather than focusing on what you didn't get done. And that brings up a very important consideration. Much of the time, we look to what's wrong rather than looking to what's right. And this is my 5th pillar of resilience, and that's mental balance and mastery. So when you wake up in the morning, if you start looking for what can go wrong in your day, you're immediately triggering your stress response. You're better off looking for what can go right in your day. And in fact, moment by moment in our lives, we always have this choice between the negative or the positive. Even something as simple as when we're facing a task, we say, oh, that's going to be difficult, or that's going to be hard. That already sends you down the negative direction. If it's something you need to be doing, you want to embrace the challenge.
You are listening to Rise on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Saran Heron, and today we're talking to Dr. Stephen Sideroff, who is an international recognized psychologist, executive, and medical consultant and expert in resilience, longevity, optimal performance addiction, neurofeedback, and mental health. He has published pioneer research in these fields. He has helped establish innovative training, treatment approaches in optimal function, mind-body medicine in the U.S., China, and Europe, and hosts a lot of different summits in longevity, resilience, and leadership. And his new book is The 9 Pillars of Resilience, the proven path to master stress, slow aging, and increase vitality. He's a thought leader, a research pioneer, established training programs around the world. He is here to talk about keys to mastering stress and how you could bounce forward, as he calls it, and let go of things you cannot change. So, Dr. Stephen, as you've been sharing the different pillars, we want to talk about mindset. We've talked about that, but I want you to share with the audience, why is mindset so important? Talk to us about that.
Yes, certainly. In fact, mindset is a key to resilience. A lot of times we talk about resilience as the ability to bounce back, right? You've heard that expression.
Yes. Yes.
And I actually say that referring to it as the ability to bounce back is a myth.
Right.
Because when you encounter a stress, a challenge in your life, and you handle it, you don't want to bounce back to where you started from. You don't want to go back to perhaps the bad messages of your childhood, which is where you started from in dealing with that stress. You want to learn a lesson from any challenge, any stress in your life. And at the end of it, you want to be better off than when you started, so that the next time you encounter a stress, you'll handle it in a much better way. And so I say that resilience is the ability to bounce forward. It's the ability to learn from each of your experiences so that you grow and be more capable of handling the next one. And that's the basis of a growth mindset, that we all have this capability of growing and learning and getting better at anything. And so if we notice a shortcoming inside ourselves, rather than feeling stuck with that shortcoming and handicapped by that shortcoming, we see it as an opportunity to bring our awareness to that situation in our lives, in our approach, and learn and grow from it, so we grow out of that shortcoming.
Now, for our listeners who are listening, and we have college students that are listening as well, it's important to understand different triggers of stress. What do you mean by that when you talk about different triggers to stress?
There are many different ways we can get triggered into stress. If we anticipate danger, we're going to get triggered into a stress response.
Yes.
So if you had a dangerous, a difficult, a stressful, a critical childhood, you come to expect people are going to be judging you, people are going to be maybe putting you down. And so you walk into a room with other people and you can immediately have a stress response as you become a little nervous about what's going to happen. If we anticipate a struggle, if we anticipate danger, if we anticipate that we're not going to do a good job, if we worry, am I going to do a good job? With students, if you're preparing for an exam and you're worried that you're not going to do well on that exam, that triggers a stress response. And the important thing to be aware of with a stress response is that we lose some of our ability to cognitively function in an optimal way. When we're stressed, our brain wants to shift into more primitive survival mechanisms. And when that happens, we lose some of our cognitive flexibility. Some of your listeners may know already, when they sit down to do an exam and they're anxious or nervous about it, they blank out.
Right.
Some of their newest learning is less accessible to them. That's why, and I've done this work with peak performing athletes. If they're worried about the outcome, they actually perform less well. And that's what, when they say, the Nike, just do it. That whole notion is
Don't even think
be
about
in the
it.
moment, be in the flow.
Yes.
And so if you sit down to take an exam, you don't want to worry about the outcome. You want to just relax, breathe, and say, let me approach this as a challenge. Let me approach this from just an exploration, an experiment. You want to minimize the outcome or the impact so that your brain functions better.
Now, you're passionate about creating possibility, hope to change and heal others. Why does that mean so much to you?
Many people actually avoid dealing with the stresses in their life. And why do they avoid it? Because the task seems so overwhelming.
Right.
So much to do, so much. How can I actually, life is just stressful. How can I, not be stressed?
Right. Or even navigate life itself.
Right. And so you want to see the process of being resilient as something that's accessible on a daily basis. It's not something that's way down the road. Okay, after I do these 10 things, then I could relax. Or after I do these 20 things, then I'll become more resilient. No, you want to feel like I can be resilient today. Yeah. And the way I present this, and I talk about it in my book, is the notion that there is the path of resilience. And this path is alongside us every day, every moment of every day. And all we need to do is identify a couple of things based on my 9 pillars of resilience, and just a couple of steps to take, and that puts us on the path. And so being on the path is available to us every day. And then once we take those few steps that put us on the path, then we are being more resilient. Then we've achieved success for today.
Now,
and that's the best we can do.
Now, would you say in terms of, because we are talking about the keys to mastering stress, you've shared resilience, adaptation, learning from experience, not using your childhood, and also you believe in self-reflection and things that are not serving you, right? So what would you say, if for those listening, what are the major keys to mastering success that you want to share with our audience for them to understand, like you said, they could bounce forward? What would you say are the keys, if you could sum that up in a few words?
Yes. So I've already talked about one of the keys, which is the growth mindset. Another key has to do with my first pillar of resilience, which is our relationship with ourselves. We all have this voice that we carry around with us 24/7. And for most of us, this voice could be self-critical, judgmental, negative, undermining, saying to us, "Oh, are you sure you got it right?" Or saying to us, "What are people going to think about you?" There's always those questions that our internal voice is asking us that creates stress. And so I like to tell people that voice that we all hear 24/7 is not one that we've developed ourselves. It's one that was sort of handed down to us through our lessons of childhood.
Interesting.
And those are not necessarily the best lessons. And so I identify the qualities of a healthy, optimal internal voice.
You are listening to Rise on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Saran Heron, and today we're talking to Dr. Steven Sideroff, who's an international recognized psychologist, executive and medical consultant, and expert in resilience, longevity, optimal performance, addiction, neurofeedback, and mental health. He has published pioneering research in these fields. He has taught in the U.S., China, Europe. His most recent book is the 9 Pillars of Resilience. He has established training programs around the world. He's here to talk about keys to mastering stress and how to bounce forward, as he calls it, and let go of things you cannot change. Now, Dr. Stephen, I want you to continue with your thought. And as we're getting ready to wrap up our program, I want you to tell our listening audience, how can they get in touch with you as well?
Okay, so just 2 quick points here. One is the development of a healthy internal voice as compared to the existing one that you all were born and raised with. And that healthy voice comes from a place of love, compassion, acceptance, support, care, and joy. Those are the qualities that you want to develop in the voice that you hear 24/7. The next key is finding islands of safety in your day. We have many stimuli that trigger the stress response, that trigger danger, threat, but we have almost none.
Right. And how can our audience get in touch with you?
Okay. So the audience can get in touch with me through my website, drstephensideroff.com, or they can email me at sideroff@ucla.edu. If they email me, I will send them my resilience assessment booklet that gives them an opportunity to get their personal resilience profile. But I also encourage them all to be more resilient with my book, The 9 Pillars of Resilience, available at all bookstores.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here today. It was a pleasure. I'm Dr. Saran Heron. It is important to know that every person has some experience, some form of stress. However, it is important, as you heard Dr. Stephen provide some excellent advice, bounce forward, change your mindset, heal, and take your setbacks as an opportunity to grow. Do some self-reflection. And we discussed something not serving you. Learn to let it go. Accept things you cannot change and start living better today. Have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you for listening to this week's edition of Rise, available wherever you listen to podcasts and always right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
They are our cuddlers and coworkers, purr machines and love bugs, and constant companions. They are our pets, our family, and they make life so much better. When we face unexpected challenges in life, so do our pets. That's why we're on a mission to support people who love their pets and the pets who love their people, ensuring these families stay exactly where they belong, together. And you have something to offer. With an open heart and mind, there is nothing you can't do. There's no gesture too small or too big when it comes to helping. Whether donating a bag of kibble, sharing an Instagram post of a lost cat, or welcoming a foster pet into your home, every bit of kindness counts. You can help keep pets and people together. Visit petsandpeopletogether.org to learn how to be a helper in your community. This has been a public service announcement brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.